you draw a connection that is very important between being different, being neurodivergent on one hand, and taking care of one's mental health. And the latter is something that everybody needs to take care of, especially in a world that is increasingly chaotic, with entropy being super active in the past 1.5 to 2 years. So we can sense all of these huge changes that are happening around us, and it's a good reminder, it's a bad and good reminder of how important it is to take care of one's own mental health and energy supply and so on and so forth. So perhaps what I would love to hear from you is another series of dot connections, this time not in time, but with themes or thematics, with polymathy being one dot and being interested in so many different things and being active on so many different levels, be it IT or business or what else. Neurodivergence, ADHD, so the second dot. The third dot is your identity and authenticity, so who you are as a person, how you identify yourself and express yourself. And the last dot, which is mental health. If you can somehow, I know my question is very weird, but then again, that's what we do at Interchange. But if you can somehow connect these dots for us, based on your experience, that would be amazing.
I mean, let me say, I mean,
take your time.
No, I know I can absolutely connect the dots. Because, right, I mean, that's really where I then, in a way, right, when I stepped out of the corporate world, right, that is then when I really started to kind of, you know, reflect on many things and really kind of understanding and kind of, you know, putting it all together, really. And because, right, even just understanding kind of the outer perspective of other people and your inner perspective. And right, I mean, when I went through surveys like 360 survey, you know, where you know, for in a company, right, someone would send you many questions and send it to others, so that 360 degree around you people would kind of value you or kind of tell you, okay, you're good in this, you're bad in that, right? I was always the one who valued myself the worst, right? My manager were the next layer, they valued me higher, and every colleague worked with me, valued me up there, right? And and by the way, I mean, fun fact, right? I learned then that my rating was in the highest, I think 5% across all Nokia employees ever, where that was done in the whole of the history and doing that in Nokia, right?
Imposter syndrome.
Absolutely, absolutely. But right, I myself never saw it. I always thought I'm really bad. I'm really not good in anything. And that, by the way, is if I connect it with a piece that, right, I spoke earlier about that ADHD was in the 60s, 70s, perhaps not really recognized. Only about 3 years ago was it recognized that, for example, for girls, it's very, very different symptoms than for boys, which was for me a complete blown. I was like, oh, because for girls it's specifically, right, this word kind of diarrhea, right? I just kind of blah, 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 blah. But it's also this, that huge kind of, how would I say, my self-esteem is pretty much, or is so low, you would have no idea. People who meet me, they're always like, Verena, you don't bullshit me. It can't be that I see you and you see yourself so on the other level of the spectrum, right? But putting that all together and then really through those years understanding myself, right? I, for example, also when I started, when I did the decision to start my own business, my oldest and best friend, right, studied, she's very much in studying, and she studied the Science of Happiness, which is a Stanford course, right? It's still offered, it's currently running, right? It's, and that course was such an eye-opener for me, because everything I learned there was like, oh, I'm doing that already. Oh my goodness, I'm doing that already. You don't need to tell me that. That's how I'm living. That's how I lived all the time. So it was a huge thing for me when I realized I was always happy at work. Everything they tried to teach me there, I did that naturally over the time. So that really started to give me, in a way, a peace of mind to understand who I am, right? And I remember when someone kind of heard my story, and he used to work right for Microsoft here in Finland, and then he was like, oh, so if you were a workaholic, so are you telling me, right, to be happy you have to be a workaholic? I was like, no. I just was so happy, and I was so kind of, you know, value adding. So I just couldn't stop working, because as long as I can add value, right, I just, right, people would pretty much drag me out of the office. And someone who, again, I don't think she wanted to harm me, but long time back in Nokia, someone was like, oh, Verena, right, you realize Nokia is, you don't own Nokia, right? And I'm like, oh, really? Oh, you mean, good that you told me that. I had no idea.
Surprise.
Right? I had no idea that I'm not bringing all that money home, right?
I love the sarcasm.
Because, right, it's really from kind of, in a way, really years-long struggle, right? Because I often say, right, I mean, you will always see me with my headset and kind of a bag which I put over my shoulder, right, and everything I need, in a way, right, to get through my day is in that bag, right? It's not a handbag, right, but it's kind of right over the shoulder, and then it's there, right? And for example, if something is not there, or right, or even if my, don't ask me, right, if this pen, it's a very high quality, right, pencil, right, very heavy, right, if that would be suddenly lost, I would go in a panic attack, right? I would run through all the Nokia meeting rooms. I was like, where's my, I need my pencil, right? So, I mean, inside there was so much struggle, right? And the whole outside would see me like, oh, amazing, she can, wow, balance, right, million of things at the same time, right? So it's really kind of getting there piece by piece, right? How can you travel constantly, right, or quite often around the world, if you don't have a mechanism to have your basics always somewhere on you, right? Because otherwise you might immediately was like, and I then even go back and say like, what the, so start to punish not really punish myself, but talk negatively about myself. I was like, how in hell can you not even keep a single thought between 2 meters there and 2 meters there, right? How do I constantly need to go back and forth, or, right, how can you not take care of your car or your apartment, right? How can you let it be so kind of loose on any level? Yeah. And I have to say that moving away from my own society, right, Germany, going somewhere where really, even though far more people know me in Finland than they know me in Germany, to be honest, right? Due to things I did around Nokia, right? Far more people know me in Finland or other parts in the world than knowing me in Germany, right? But really putting my own kind, or I usually say that there's this little voice in the back of our mind, right? And even though perhaps no one ever tells us certain things, how we should behave, right? But that voice is in the back of our mind there, right? I'm a woman, so come on, how can you not become a mother, right? Build a family, right? I hate the heat, right? Everyone else in summer, yoo-hoo, right? I want to go out, right? I want to enjoy the heat. I was like, I really don't, right? I don't like vacation, right? After 2 weeks, I don't even like weekends not to work, right? Nowadays, I work 7.5 hours every day in the week for the corporate job, and every other hour I do left, right, connect people whatsoever. On a Friday afternoon in my old world, right, I was like, oh no, it's Friday, right? I still wanted to do this and that and that. And then usually I put myself in a closet, right? On Monday morning, yeah, I can be productive again.
Love that.
So
It's breaking all stereotypes.
Right.
All of them.
I mean, it's because, right, I mean, how can you, for example, wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning, right? How can you not, right, enjoy the life outside of work? Come on, right? I mean, most people think, oh, I do work because I want to enjoy my life outside of work, right? For me, the fun in my life was the work bit, not the part outside, right? And for example, when I moved here, that was a big step for me to really kind of start to embrace myself. But it was still, I mean, because of different reasons, what happened in Nokia, right? Organizational changes, a lot going on. Work became really a bigger burden for me than it was before. But my life became far more balanced here. Interesting, for example, I was my whole life heavily under hay fever. So, I mean, pretty much from March to September, sneezing so that your whole body just goes like 10 times exactly. One of my key trigger for allergy are birch trees. And Paul, I'm sure you know there are millions of birch trees around me here in Finland.
This is
interesting.
Finland is all birch trees.
Ever since I moved to Finland, my allergy is pretty much gone.
Mm.
And what I at least recently, and whether it's true or not, but at least, right, science says ADHD, because it means pretty much you have no filter. Everything what's happening is completely pretty much kind of right. So, and what they say is because, right, it's as a baby, right, so that as a baby, your body is not really good in building kind of, immune system because of constantly exposed. And so, because I think, at least in my memory, since age 5, right, I'm heavily kind of impacted from hay fever. Right, so that was part of impacting my whole life, right? In summer, everyone has fun outside. For me, dark room, wet towel on my face because my eyes would, you know, just go into a small slit, right? And they say that if you balance your life out, right, mental, everything, right, then, right, also your allergies can go away. So that, because in the first years, I would kind of refer that to the very fresh air we have here. But here I can really kind of go into the nature for hours without sneezing once and without medication. I mean, this year it's really heavy, so even I have to take once in a while, but one pill in the morning and I'm fine, right? But, and there was still something, about the right, waking up at 4 o'clock. And that obviously also means that I will not be awake at 11 o'clock in the evening, and I might not be, I mean, I can also meet people in the evening, but then I really need to, in a way, meet them relatively early, because as long as I meet you and talk with you, I'm energized. I can stay awake until 11 o'clock, but I need them to have that interaction with other people. And an interesting thing, the other day, right, a very dear colleague at my day job, right, what I call my work as deployment manager, where my salary is currently coming from, she shared a podcast with me where she said, hey, right, that is about good money, and the guy who was interviewed has ADHD as well, and she recommended it to me. And I listened to it earlier this week on one of my long walks, on my walks to Siurasari, beautiful island in the middle of Helsinki. And I'm not sure if you have heard of him. His name is Peter Schenkman. And he also learned quite late in his life, I think he said they are 34, that he was diagnosed with ADHD. But he said he started, right, Alessandra, just like the guy you met about, right, who invented the early YouTube. He was full of energy. He started all kind of business, etc. And he spoke also about the fact waking up early. And he said, right, if people ask him, how can you wake up so early? And he said, just go earlier to bed. It's as simple as that. Right? And when I moved here, I had one big revelation when, right, a friend who is from Nigeria living here, and he said, oh, you know, when can we talk in the evening? And I was like, ah. And on the same days, a friend from Germany, she was like, oh, I want to talk with you, and right, you know, how, and she was, I'm just going on a run, right? So when can we talk? And but for me, it's always an hour later, right? And I finally was able, brave enough against all the kind of society expectation, how you should behave, was finally brave enough to say, to be honest, guys, forget it, right? That is my time when I'm mentally strong. And I'm happy to have a call with you, right, at 6 o'clock in the morning, 7, 8 o'clock, weekend, we will find a slot. But don't expect from me, right, that I have time for you when my time is to mentally shut down.
Yeah, and the environment in which we live in has so many expectations for us individually, and it's even harder. Yes. So it's already hard for everybody, but it's even harder for the ones who don't share the kind of characteristics or behavior patterns as everybody else, because there's kind of this gap between how you live your day and how the other person live their days. Yes. And that would apply for someone who likes to work late at night up until 3, 4 a.m. in the morning, and who can only wake up at 11 a.m. and 12 p.m. and who perhaps have made a sacrifice to record a podcast early in the morning. Now, I'm not talking about you, Paul, not at all. So it's the same, because there are certain, oh, you don't wake up early in the morning. Oh, you wake up at midday. Oh, you sleep at 3, 4 a.m. in the morning. Now, of course, arguably from a sleep pattern, it might not be very, very, very healthy if you don't get enough sleep and rest and all of that. But the idea of having all these expectations, because we think that this is the way things are supposed to be, it just doesn't make sense. It's not sensical.
Yeah, there's an incredible strength in this, just looking at oneself and being honest about one's needs. I mean, that's actually, it was a huge bonus for me when the Corona lockdown started. Suddenly I wasn't obligated to wake up several hours earlier than I needed to be functional, just so that I could get my head in a state where I could stand other people. Like, I didn't need to do that every day. I could then, you know, effectively, you know, schedule my time, work with what worked with my brain, and then talking with other people and realizing that you're not necessarily alone in this, that other people have had similar experiences, whether it's aligned to a different time of day or not, but that we aren't alone in this idea, or in the imposter syndrome, or in seeing oneself as the angry child sitting on the dinner table. Like, I similarly have had conversations with my family where, you know, when I describe myself as a child, I'm always thinking of myself in terms of, you know, I was extremely quiet, and I was looking at everyone judgmentally, thinking like, what is wrong with that person? I wouldn't say a word, because it was much more polite to just quietly stare. But there was judgment. And then everyone who talks about me as a child, oh, you were so happy, and you were so these other things. And I'm like, really? Why is my memory so different? Like, and then just having this understanding that the outside and the inside of a person, they're both valid and relevant, and that we aren't necessarily the only people who are fighting through these incongruities, these odd sort of.
And I mean, one thing, because what I noticed, and I mean, one thing which also kind of helped my transformation in those years when I then said, okay, this is a business, right? I gained another kind of dear friend in those years, right? And he is a minimalist. He's an amazing person. I usually, when I describe him, I say, right, he has written people in capital letters written on his soul. And through him, I learned a lot and I've reflected a lot. And yeah, and where what do I tell that now? But because what I learned through him and also kind of the reflecting on people is really that we all are individuals, right? With our struggle, with our whatever it takes. And there's easy with kind of whether you really want to hurt another person or you don't want to hurt another person, but you don't realize it. So to really accept the person as they are, right? And because Alexandra, what you earlier said, right? When people say like, right, how dare you not do this? Or how can you do not like what everyone else like, right? That every time you say that out loud to another person, you have no idea what that triggers in the brain of that person. Yeah. Right? Because that really might hit them completely, right, and kick them completely in the wrong direction, right? Because that might play, depending on the person, right? It might be a normal person, it might be a neurodiverse person, whatsoever. It might completely, you know, take them over the edge, right? Or it may play with their brain for the next 30 years.